Hi, Congregation Beth Am. It's Rabbi Rosenberg here, and this week I want to talk about the idea of sacred space. This is an idea which has actually fascinated me for a long time because Judaism manages to capture a contradiction in what it means to have sacred space. On the one hand, our tradition has always asserted that we believe that God is everywhere. There is no place without the divine presence. We know that God fills all of creation, which means that every single space in this world is potentially a space where we can feel the presence of holiness, which means, in theory, every space is a potential place for prayer. But we also know that there are special places set aside for prayer. There's the temple in Jerusalem, there are synagogues, there are other sacred spaces. And my understanding from my teachers over the years has been this is the difference between what we might call God's perspective and our perspective, or maybe it's better to call it the theoretical reality versus the actual reality. In theory, God is everywhere, or if you like this language, from God's point of view, God is everywhere. There isn't any place which is truly without the possibility of holiness, and I deeply believe that, as does our tradition. But at the same time, I know that's not how my brain works. I know there are certain places that evoke a greater sense of spirituality than others. Right now I'm talking to you from my office, which is fairly comfortable, but also, frankly, uninspiring. I usually lead Shabbat services from downstairs in the library, where I've got a view of the outside and better lighting and books behind me. And the sanctuary is even better for this kind of thing. Being in the sanctuary kind of acts as an almost Pavlovian trigger for me. It reminds me, by going in there, that it's time to pray. And that's the most important idea, or maybe one of the most important ideas of sacred space. It serves as a mental trigger to get us into that right headspace. I'm talking about this now because we are just under a month away from the High Holy Days. And I mentioned in the message I sent out last week that I think it's important that we start thinking about our space as we get close to the holidays. We're not going to be able to come into the sanctuary, and that's going to be hard in a lot of ways. One of the largest might be it's going to be hard for most of us to really get ourselves into services, to get into that prayerful space that we might be able to in the sanctuary. Our homes just aren't set up for this. They're filled with distractions. They're often messy, which can be visually and mentally distracting. They might be uncomfortable, or more likely they're too comfortable. Right? We want to be comfortable in synagogue, but not so comfortable that we fall asleep. And also the fact that we're going to be, most of us, participating in services via our computers or tablets or smartphones means that whole set of distractions is going to be really ever present. And I think if we're going to make these holidays special, it's going to take a little bit of planning on our part. And I mentioned before, and I will send out a couple of articles with a lot of ideas, but I want to give you two ideas, or a few ideas specifically that you can start working on now pretty easily. One is just go ahead and start deciding where you want to be for services. Actually designate a spot. And if you can do something to designate it visually, to put something beautiful there or something like that, that will, again, help you with that mental shift. That might be really helpful. Maybe just as importantly, I encourage you to think about your seating. To put a seat or a chair that, again, will be comfortable enough to make you happy to sit there for an hour or two, but maybe not make you want to lean back and fall asleep. I know that falling asleep in services is something people do sometimes, but it's easier on our couch. And that brings me to the last idea, which might actually kind of contradict that one based on how our houses are set up, but it also might be time to think about the screens we're going to use. I know for myself, if I'm on a meeting or a webinar or anything on my computer or my iPad, the temptation to click off and check the news or look at Facebook or play a game is sometimes nearly overwhelming. And I know that it's going to be the same thing for services. If you're watching services on your computer, it's almost inevitable that you'll be watching your Facebook feed side by side. So maybe set it up so you won't be doing that. Maybe get a television now hooked up so you can watch services on there. Something like that that gives you the ability to step back, both literally and figuratively, from all those distractions and really focus on services. I've said before, and I'll probably keep saying, this is going to be a challenge this year. This will not be a high holidays like any other that we've ever experienced. But if we take these small steps, we might really be able to get ourselves into that special place, and might be able to be really surprised by how meaningful these services might be. I really look forward to talking to you more about this, to getting ready for the High Holy Days, and of course, hopefully, for seeing everybody in person soon. Take care, everybody.